Washington. 7 years ago, an internal government watchdog took a hard look at the part of the Federal Aviation Administration responsible for certifying new Boeing jetliners. The watchdog's investigation came to some alarming conclusions. FAA employees viewed their management. The inquiry by the Transportation Department's Inspector General found as having too close a relationship with Boeing officials. FAA managers, the report said, had not always backed efforts by agency employees to hold Boeing accountable, and employees feared retaliation for trying to do so. The part of the FAA under scrutiny, the Transport Airplane Directorate, was led at the time by an aerospace engineer named Ali Barami. The next year, he took a job at the Aerospace Industries Association, a trade group whose members include Boeing. In that position, he urged his former agency to allow manufacturers like Boeing to perform as much of the work of certifying new planes as possible. Mr. Barami is now back at the FAA as its top safety official. The question of whether the FAA has gone too far in allowing Boeing to regulate itself has emerged as one of the key issues after the crash of a Boeing 737 MAX in Ethiopia this month, the second deadly crash of the new plane in less than 5 months. The practice is already coming under scrutiny from Congress, and lawmakers are likely to press the FAA's acting administrator on Wednesday when he appears at a Senate hearing. The practice has been repeatedly endorsed by Congress and successive administrations to speed up the certification process for Boeing and the rest of the aviation industry while holding down costs for the government. In theory, delegating much of the day-to-day regulatory work to Boeing allows the FAA to focus its limited resources on the most critical safety work, taps into existing industry technical expertise at a time when airliners are becoming increasingly complex, and allows Boeing in particular to bring out new planes faster at a time of intense global competition with its European rival Airbus. But over the years, government watchdogs and unions have raised flags, warnings that are getting renewed attention in light of the two Boeing crashes. It is not clear what role Boeing employees played in vetting the automated flight control system, known as MCAS, that appears to have played a central role in the crash of Lion Air Flight 610 in October, and may have played a role in the crash of Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 this month as well. The Seattle Times reported last week that a safety analysis for MCAS was delegated to Boeing, and that the company produced a document that had significant flaws. Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao has requested that her department's Inspector General conduct an audit of how the 737 MAX 8, the model involved in both deadly crashes, was certified. Lawmakers have asked the Inspector General to examine the role that the delegation program played in the MAX's certification. And the Justice Department is investigating the plane's development, a person briefed on the inquiry said. Image a Boeing 737 MAX plane at the Boeing plant in Renton, Washington. After two crashes of such planes, new questions have emerged about the FAA's practice of delegating much of its day-to-day regulatory work for certifying new jetliners to the industry. Credit Ruth Fremson, The New York Times. Under the delegation program, the staff responsible for regulating aircraft safety are answerable to the manufacturers who profit from cutting corners, not the American people who may be put at risk. Senator Richard Blumenthal, Democrat of Connecticut, wrote to the Inspector General last week. A statement, the FAA said that it had never allowed companies to police themselves or self-certify their aircraft. With strict FAA oversight, delegation extends the rigor of the FAA certification process to other recognized professionals, thereby multiplying the technical expertise focused on assuring an aircraft meets FAA standards, the agency said. The practice of delegating authority from regulators to plane makers stretches back decades. For the Boeing 747-400, approved in 1989 as an update to the iconic jumbo jet, the FAA estimated that it had delegated 95% of the certification work, according to a 1993 report from the agency now known as the Government Accountability Office. The report raised concerns that the FAA had turned over responsibility for critical work, including analyses of hypothetical failures of systems. The FAA overhauled its approach to delegation in 2005, creating a new program that expanded the authority given to manufacturers to help certify their own products. Under the new program, called Organization Designation Authorization, companies like Boeing can choose their own employees to work on behalf of the FAA when the FAA moved to create the program. Boeing called it an important building block toward increased delegation throughout the aviation industry, but not everyone in aviation circles shared that positive view. The National Air Traffic Controllers Association, whose members include FAA certification employees, said at the time that the FAA's new approach provides less specific and technical FAA oversight and therefore would in time lower the safety of the flying public. Another FAA union, now known as the Professional Aviation Safety Specialists, said it would oppose any system that allows industry to self-regulate oversight via the honor system. The union wrote that the FAA's blatant outsourcing was reckless and would actually compromise public air safety, not enhance it. The FAA was rushing to hand off their oversight responsibilities to industry and virtually establishing a fox guarding the henhouse mentality, the union wrote. The delegation program has come under scrutiny on multiple occasions since then. In 2011, after a review stretching nearly 2 years, the Transportation Department's Inspector General released an audit that raised concerns about the FAA's oversight of the program. The report warned that the new delegation program created the risk that plane makers could choose employees with inadequate qualifications or a history of poor performance to prove certification projects. The report cited an instance where FAA engineers were concerned about the integrity of an employee acting on the agency's behalf at an unnamed manufacturer because the employee was advocating a position that directly opposed FAA rules on an aircraft fuel system in favor of the manufacturer. Representative Daniel Lipinski, Democrat of Illinois, had requested the review. On Monday, he said that the delegation program, known in aviation lingo as the ODA program, had not been a source of concern in recent years, but that the 2 crashes should prompt another look at it. Part of the question is, did the ODA program, did that in any way impact the certification of these planes, he said. I think it's a legitimate question. In another audit released in 2015, the Inspector General's office again reviewed the FAA's oversight of the delegation program. Once again, the watchdog raised concerns about the FAA's supervision of the program, including about the focus of its oversight work and whether there was adequate staffing to perform that work. Industry representatives expressed concern that FAA's focus was often on paperwork, not onto safety-critical items, the report said. One factor in the debate is the FAA's budget. If Congress wanted the government to handle more certification work without slowing down the approval of new planes, lawmakers would most likely need to drastically increase funding for the FAA, so it could expand its staff. Instead, Congress has encouraged the FAA to delegate more certification work to manufacturers. A report accompanying a spending bill last year said that utilizing the FAA's program for delegating authority to manufacturers was key to improving the effectiveness and efficiency of product certification. Ideally, if resources are no constraint, you would want the regulator to be doing it all, said Christopher A. Hart, a former FAA official and National Transportation Safety Board chairman. But this isn't the ideal world and resources are constrained, Mr. Hart cited the stellar safety record of commercial air travel in the United States in recent years as evidence of the delegation system's success. If it's properly done, he said, it can equate to the safety of not delegating.